The wedding dress still hung in the penthouse window like a ghost of a life that was supposed to begin that morning, but instead, the CEO stood alone, staring at the city below as if it had betrayed her. Hours ago, makeup artists and planners filled the space with noise and urgency, yet now there was only silence and the echo of a truth she could no longer outrun. On the day she was meant to say yes forever, she realized she had been pretending, performing love like a role expected of her, and her heart finally refused to cooperate. The ring lay untouched on the marble counter as she walked away from everything she was supposed to want, carrying nothing but a desperate need to breathe honestly for the first time in years. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and real love that doesn't need to be faked, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Her name was Eleanor Wright, the youngest CEO to ever lead Wright Global Solutions, a woman praised in magazines for her intelligence, beauty, and unshakable confidence. But behind the glass walls of her office and the flawless public image was a loneliness that had grown quietly for years. Her engagement to a powerful investor seemed perfect on paper, a merger of love and ambition, yet every night she lay awake feeling like an actress trapped in a script written by others. When the moment arrived to commit forever, the weight of that lie crushed her chest, and she knew she could not continue. Canceling the wedding shattered reputations, sparked rumors, and sent shockwaves through the company, but none of that mattered as much as the strange pull she felt toward a man whose life was nothing like hers. Miles Carter was a single father who lived in a modest house at the edge of town, juggling deadlines and bedtime stories with equal exhaustion. His wife had passed away years earlier, leaving him to raise their young daughter Lily alone, and grief had carved deep lines into his face long before his age should have allowed. Every morning, he woke before sunrise to prepare breakfast, pack lunches, and then drive Lily to school before heading to work at Wright Global Solutions, where he was known as dependable, quiet, and invisible. He never complained, never asked for favors, and never expected life to be fair again. The only thing that mattered to him was getting home in time to read Lily a story and remind her that she was safe. Eleanor noticed Miles not because he tried to impress her, but because he never did. In meetings, he spoke only when necessary, offering thoughtful insights without ego, and when praise came, he deflected it with humility. She once saw him late at night in the office kitchen, carefully wrapping leftover food in napkins to take home, and something about that simple act stayed with her. Over time, brief conversations turned into longer ones, and she found herself listening more than speaking, something she rarely did with anyone else. Miles talked about Lily with a softness that cracked something open inside her, a reminder that love could be quiet, imperfect, and still real. As Eleanor's wedding approached, the distance between her public life and her private truth grew unbearable. Each conversation with Miles felt like stepping into fresh air after years underground, and each step toward the altar felt heavier than the last. When she finally walked away from the ceremony, she didn't head back to her office or her family estate. Instead, driven by an impulse she didn't fully understand, she had her driver take her to Miles's address, clutching nothing but her phone and the courage she had finally found. When she arrived at his door, rain began to fall, blurring the city lights behind her and soaking the expensive shoes she no longer cared about. Miles opened the door expecting a delivery or a neighbor, only to find his boss standing there, eyes red, makeup gone, and vulnerability written across her face. In that moment, the power imbalance between CEO and employee dissolved into something painfully human. She stepped inside the small, warm house filled with the scent of home-cooked food and children's crayons scattered on the table, and for the first time in years, Eleanor felt like she belonged somewhere without having to earn it. The days that followed were not easy or romantic in the way movies promise. Rumors exploded across the company, shareholders panicked, and Miles feared for his job and his daughter's stability. Eleanor faced lawsuits, public backlash, and the cold disappointment of people who only valued her success. Yet in the quiet evenings spent helping Lily with homework or cooking simple meals together, something stronger than fear began to grow. Eleanor learned what it meant to slow down, to listen, to care without strategy, while Miles learned that letting someone in did not mean betraying the memory of the woman he had lost. One night, after a particularly brutal day at work, Miles broke down, the weight of years of responsibility finally catching up to him. He admitted that he had spent so long being strong that he forgot how to hope, and that loving again felt terrifying and impossible. Eleanor, sitting beside him, realized that her tears mirrored his, because she too had been strong for too long, building empires while her heart starved. In that shared vulnerability, they found a connection deeper than ambition or status, something raw and healing. Over time, the company stabilized, not because Eleanor returned to her old ways, but because she led with a new honesty that inspired loyalty instead of fear. Miles earned a promotion not through favoritism, but through recognition of his quiet brilliance, and Lily grew attached to Eleanor in a way that surprised everyone, including Eleanor herself. The house that once felt too small for Eleanor's life became the center of it, filled with laughter, messy mornings, and a sense of peace she never knew she was missing. Years later, Eleanor would look back on the day she canceled her wedding not as a failure, but as the bravest decision she ever made. She didn't run toward another man out of desperation, she ran toward truth. Miles, once convinced that love was something he had already used up in his lifetime, found himself believing again, not because life promised him happiness, but because he allowed himself to accept it when it arrived unexpectedly at his door. If this story stirred something inside you, if it reminded you that it's never too late to choose honesty over expectation and love over fear, take a moment now to like, comment, and share this video so it can reach someone who might need it today. And before the ending fades, please comment just one word that describes how this story made you feel, because sometimes, the most powerful love stories aren't about perfect beginnings, but about the courage to stop pretending and the grace to open the door when life shows up unannounced, soaked in rain, asking to be let in.